However, we also know that this fight won't be won with Harvard alone, so we're excited about supporting alumni with affiliations at other campuses to activate similar efforts across the country. We look forward to tonight sharing lessons, tools, and resources with you all on how to go about this organizing, and it all starts with showing up, which you already have. So thank you again, and I'll now turn it over to Patty Nolan.
Thank you so much, Simon. I'm just really grateful for you being involved in this. I am Patty Nolan. I'm Harvard class of 1980, so long after Simon. I also want to note I'm a Yale SOM, School of Management grad. So like all of you on this call, I have an affiliation and an alum of another university. And very excited about all of us being here. We decided this was the alternative to the State of the Union right now, so I'm glad you're all joining us. The overview of the meeting to let you know, next up after this, Miles Rappaport, who is also a co-chair of Crimson Courage with myself and Christina Jenk, will give an update on what we've been doing, a brief summary of where we've been and where we're going. Then we're going to have four people talk about the range of activities that are happening. As Simon said, we are all Harvard alums. Harvard is in this fight. We want Harvard to continue to stand up, and yet Harvard can't do it alone. And we all want the entire sector of higher education to be supporting Harvard and also other institutions who are in this moment that is critical for so many different areas we care about and values we care about: higher education, the rule of law, academic freedom. So Aiden, we'll have four people talk from a couple different perspectives. And then Lou Finfer, who is also deeply involved and one of the founders of Crimson Courage, will talk about classic organizing, about how to set up or connect with a campus group. Then we'll have a Q&A with the panelists to answer your questions. Please put your questions in the, I believe it's the chat, which Simon will be moderating and we'll be picking up questions on. And then we'll have a quick end of the meeting, and you'll be good to go to your next activity. We will keep to a time and expect to end by 8:30. So right now I'm going to turn it over to Miles Rappaport.
Okay, thank you, Patty. And I want to just say two quick thank yous before I dig into a little bit about Crimson Courage. One, a thank you to John Weiser, who has volunteered to kind of be the backbone and technologist for this webinar and many others. And I also want to say a big thank you to Simon Thompson, who has been just core to the activities of Crimson Courage, and especially thinking about how we can give some leadership or some encouragement to organizing on other campuses. So let me just say a little bit about how Crimson Courage started, what we did, and where we think we are now and where we are going. And I think I can do this quickly. So people probably know, all of you probably know that Crimson Courage started in April, kind of with a bang, and it turned out that the bang was the Trump administration shooting at Harvard University. So that was the bang. I think when that happened, I think alums everywhere around the country just sort of stood up and took notice and said, "This is unacceptable. This is something we need to do something about." So this also was happening just before commencement. So we started with a webinar that had 5,500 people that signed on to it. We also participated in an amicus brief that was happening, which got 12,000 signatures of Harvard alums, which was really important in the court case that Harvard decided to launch against the Trump administration. So that gave us a really kind of a good start and a good sense that we could, on the one hand, support Harvard, but on the other hand, be an independent voice to make sure that Harvard continued to stand up. We did several sign-on letters from that, and that grew our mailing list to about 15,000, and we're now about 17,000 on our mailing list, so which is great. We did a demonstration at the courthouse in Boston when the Harvard and the AAUP suits were being heard. And we also did a stickering at the commencement where we passed out our Crimson Courage stickers. And it looked to me like about 2/3 of the people at commencement and at the reunion festivities were all wearing their Crimson Courage stickers, which I thought was a great idea. So that was all in the kind of mid to late spring. In the summer, we were continually sort of stoked up by what seemed like a bi-weekly article in the New York Times saying that some new billionaire had gotten involved, and so Harvard and the Trump administration were on the verge of a settlement. And Trump was boasting about bringing Harvard to its knees. So we did a bunch of letters. We kind of stood up. We made it very clear to the administration that we thought an agreement that violated the basic principles of institutional autonomy, academic freedom, and standing up for a welcoming and diverse community was unacceptable. So anyway, now I think my own view, and I think it's probably shared by other Crimson Courage people, is that we're actually not likely to see a formal knuckling under of Harvard to the Trump administration. I think things have gone too far, and the Trump administration has gone so way out of bounds. But that doesn't mean that that Harvard is out of the woods, and it certainly doesn't mean that higher education is out of the woods. So I think there are kind of three things that Crimson Courage wants to do now. Two of them are Harvard related. We are actively looking at candidates for the Harvard Alumni Association and the Harvard Board of Overseers. I really hope they change that name pretty soon. And on the other hand, and also we are concerned that although there hasn't been a settlement, there has been backsliding on a number of issues related to the diversity of the campus, to the kind of political narrowing that's happening. And so we are looking at that and going to be looking at how we can make sure that that doesn't go further. And then the second thing that we are doing, and this is a kind of example of it, is to try to make sure that whatever Crimson Courage has learned and whatever we've done and whatever kind of encouragement we can give to other places, we do that. There is a need for a national movement. Higher education, whether Harvard continues to stand up or it doesn't, all of higher education is going to continue to be under attack from the Trump administration. There's no question about it. We don't know exactly all of the forms that will take, but it's certainly happening. And so we need to stand up. Fortunately for us, and this will lead us to the panel, there are a number of really good national efforts that are actually taking place. So one is, and you're going to hear from Aidan Ledbetter momentarily, Stanford Campus Freedom has done a really, really good job of reaching out to alumni associations on a number of college campuses. Secondly, we're really excited that the Emergency Campaign for Higher Education is up and running. I think we are going to be doing some good work with them as we go forward. And in fact, with their help, Crimson Courage is hiring an organizer whose main job will be to work with all of you in your work with other campuses. So to the degree that you are actively involved with whatever other campus whatever other college you're connected to, we will try to give as much help as we possibly can through that organizer and certainly through the Crimson Courage folks as well. So we're really looking forward to a lot of national work. We're delighted that so many of you have joined us today to talk about it. And we're now going to have the panel, which is 4 people, all of whom I know, and all of whom are terrific. Aidan Ledbetter from Stanford Campus Freedom, Karen Scharf, who's our Crimson Courage's representative to the Emergency Campaign for Higher Education, Don Levitt, who has begun a terrific organization at the University of Michigan called Maize and Blue Courage, and lastly, Erica Newland, who is one of the key leaders in Stand Up for Yale. So anyway, that's the kind of current story on Crimson Courage. Delighted to pass it over to Aidan Ledbetter. Aidan, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Miles. Good evening, everybody. My name is Aidan. I am the national organizer at Stanford Campus Freedom. Looking through the chat, I see so many folks, so many new faces, so many folks that we've worked with. So for those, hello. Stanford Campus Freedom, we launched back in October of last year, kind of inspired by a lot of the grassroots alumni groups that had come together, recognizing that there is a real need for a national coalition of alumni across many, many different campuses in the pursuit of defending higher education. I think everyone in this call recognizes that alumni have a really unique power on each of their university campuses. And it's a power that, frankly, a lot of folks do not realize. When we think about collegiate organizing on campus, we tend to think about students, we tend to think about faculty, professors, et cetera, scientists, but we rarely think about what role do alumni play. And the reality is that alumni are very central in a lot of these fights. When we think about the students, a lot of these students, their parents are alumni of the university. Most of these faculty members that are organizing are alumni of other universities. At the center of all of these Venn diagrams, there tends to be an alumni. When we think about what things that the universities care about in the regents, a lot of those things are in the power of alumni. And we view alumni at Stanford Campus Freedom, we view alumni as critical in this fight to protect academic freedom, not just on individual campuses, but nationwide in coalition. We view them as critical members and partners of the community when students and faculty are organizing and getting out to work. And that's kind of our MO. We are working to organize those alumni so that each campus community can have coalitions and really, organize as effectively as possible. I think some more folks here will be talking about the emergency campaign, so I'll hold on that for now. In my day-to-day, I get a lot of questions about, how can I, as a well-meaning alumni, organize my entire community? How can I make a difference when I'm only one person? And the question is, there's a lot. The answer is there is really a lot to do. I've had a lot of folks come to me and say, I want to get involved, but I'm one person. I'm hesitant. And my answer to that is now is the time to absolutely get involved. In a time when universities continue to capitulate, continue to be threatened by various federal actions, we need dedicated alumni just like you all in this call to stand up and get involved. Because chances are you are not alone in your concern and your oversee of your university campus. And folks just don't know how to get involved. And really, all of these movements kind of are born out of just a couple well-meaning folks willing to stand up and say something. And that's what really helps draw additional people in. Stanford Campus Freedom, one of our things that we do is we have a lot of technical support that we provide to alumni to help get public, to help, reach other alumni who they may not know and may not have in their own networks, including, a online petition platform, a website development, a full slate of advising and support for going public. That's one of the main things that we really advise when folks are just getting started is try to be as public as possible. Go out there, lead with what your values are, and spread the message. And we have a whole slate of support to support you guys. I'll share the link to our website, stanfordcampusfreedom.org. You get more information about us there. And yeah, in terms of, where these alumni groups sort of fit in their broader university campus community, they play a very important role. Like I said, a lot of alumni in this scene are very concerned about the direction that higher education is going, concerned about, ongoing attacks at their university, but don't know how to get involved. A lot of these alumni may look to their, school's alumni association, or they may look to official channels of the university looking for answers, looking for ways to get involved, and they come up short. A lot of times you'll notice that alumni associations aren't speaking out. So these alumni groups fill an important void and provide an important outlet for folks who are concerned to get involved and get engaged and stand up for academic freedom at their campuses. So thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Karen Scharf. As Miles said, I'm been an active leader with Crimson Courage, and I currently represent Crimson Courage on a new campaign called the Emergency Campaign in support of higher education. As Simon said at the beginning, this fight can't be won by Harvard alone. So Crimson Courage leaders, especially with Lou Finfer's leadership, who you'll hear from later, helped develop this new emergency campaign in order to create a larger national campaign we can all join in on and be part of. The campaign intentionally brings together all of the different constituencies within higher ed to have a collaborative campaign. So alums, students, faculty, staff, and community, both community groups and community leaders like elected officials and others. Plus, we also have some collaboration with administrators associations as part of our planning and thinking. And the goal is to build a large national campaign to stop the federal attack on higher ed and to stand up for higher ed as one of the key fronts in the consolidation of authoritarian control. I think a lot of us came to this not because we specifically are concerned about higher ed, although of course we are, but also because we see higher ed as one of the places where the Trump administration's attempt to impose an authoritarian government and ideological control of our institutions is at the forefront and is one of the front lines of attack, along with immigration and immigrants. And so the good news is the emergency campaign is getting off the ground. It's going to fully launch in March. We've hired staff. And the goal is to run not to like build a new organization or build a new coalition really, although it is a broad and representative coalition. But the idea is to really run a series of campaigns as different issues come up that are affecting multiple campuses all across the country. And the initial campaign issues are probably going to be, or so far already, are keeping ICE off campus. And there's Stanford Campus Freedom has a toolkit on that. The emergency campaign has a toolkit on that. There's going to be a webinar that Indivisible and Stanford Campus Freedom are doing together, along with emergency campaign, to talk about ICE off campus as well as some other issues. And then the other big issue that we see coming up in the spring is some version that they will come up with, that the Trump administration will come up with, that's sort of a Compact 2.0. Some of you probably remember in the fall, they put out the Compact as a voluntary thing that schools could join if they want to get funding. We expect a more coercive version of that. And the most folks who are in the higher ed world think that that's going to focus in some way around financial aid and accreditation. And we've already seen some steps that the Trump folks are taking to move on accreditation. But that is a relatively slow process, so they may go right more directly after financial aid much faster than that. So talking about ICE off campus, getting ready for whatever Compact 2.0 turns out to be, most likely financial aid and accreditation. And alum groups can sign on to the emergency campaign by signing the pledge. I'll put that in the chat in a moment. And that pledge is called the Pledge to Put Students First, and it basically lays out the principles of the emergency campaign. And for the purposes of this call, we wanted to let you know about the campaign because it's a way that as you're organizing alums from these other schools, it's a thing that they can tie into, feel part of something bigger, see how we can cumulatively and collaboratively have a bigger impact altogether. And also the campaign will be providing tactics and activities that you can offer up to the alums that you're organizing to get them started. We hope that all of you on this call can help build the alumni pillar of this campaign. And obviously the way to do that is by organizing more alums at more campuses to take action. And we want to help you do that. As the previous speakers have said, we want to support you from the Stanford Campus Freedom can provide support. Crimson Courage is in the process of hiring the organizer who can provide support. And the emergency campaign also has staff and organizers that can provide support. And also, especially the emergency campaign organizers can especially connect you with the other pillars at your school, the faculty, the staff unions, student groups. We're working with a number of national organizations across those constituencies that have chapters all over the country. In addition, I want to just mention that Stanford Campus Freedom and Indivisible are both part of the emergency campaign, and they're sponsoring a webinar on March 11th for alumni groups to help us all build the alumni organizing more deeply and broadly. And the ICE off campus actions and tools will be a focus of that, but also there'll be ideas and tools for building alumni groups and also for preparing for this idea of a Compact 2.0 financial aid attack. As others have said, alumni organizing is critical to building a national movement. As alums, we're often more able to speak out since we're not at risk in the way that students, faculty, and staff might be. And as we've seen at Harvard, university administrators are concerned about what alumni think and are hesitant, are more likely to listen to alums. I am going to paste in the pledge and then turn it over to Don.
Thank you, Karen. I'm Donald Levitt. I'm the chair of Maize and Blue Courage. We started in October as an indivisible 1 million rising group. If you know the concept of the pillars that Indivisible has, there are pillars that hold up democracy and pillars that can be shaken under certain circumstances. And we looked at pillars in Ann Arbor, and there's one major pillar in Ann Arbor, and that's the University of Michigan. That's what led us to target higher education. The first thing we did was create a website, and we looked at all the similar organizations and copied freely. We took a lot, in particular, from Cornell Courage and created an open letter, as many of those organizations have done. We registered with Indivisible at a national level, and they connected us with Stanford Campus Freedom and Crimson Courage, which was the best thing that ever happened to us. We first spoke with Aiden and Stanford Campus Freedom on December 19th. At that point, we had 200 people who had signed our letter. And I said, well, Aiden, I think we'll write a follow-up to that in January because it is the holiday season. He said, no, people lose interest real fast. And Aiden encouraged us and supported us all through the holiday season. And we sent a follow-up letter on December 29th. I'd written a beautiful letter and submitted it to Aiden and Eden, and they totally rewrote it and made it much, much better. And they helped us tremendously with reaching out in an ongoing way. Then a few days later, on December 22nd, we had a lovely meeting with Karen and Miles and Lou, who spent a full hour with me inspiring and giving me contacts and ideas. And it was wonderful. One simple idea that was powerful was to get a list of graduates from a specific year and contact your classmates. And we had a couple people actually do that very successfully. So it was so wonderful to get that help. Again, following the lead of Crimson Courage, on February 10th, we had a webinar. While we could not get our governor, we did get our Attorney General. Attorney General Dana Nessel, who's a University of Michigan alumna. We had faculty, we had the student government president, and we had Patty Nolan representing Crimson Courage. And we had Aiden speaking about Stanford Campus Freedom, and Aiden and Stanford Campus Freedom hosted that webinar for us, among the many things they've done to help us. And of course, we put the webinar on our website. And then just last Thursday, I had an opportunity to speak with the University of Michigan Regents and President at a public commentary session, and had 2 minutes and put that on our website. And shockingly, we feel like we have a real foundation with what we've done, with the letter that we've submitted with signatures and the webinar and speaking. This was actually our second time speaking to the Regents. And so our new transition now is our initial indivisible group only had 2 University of Michigan alumni on it because we didn't arise from a University of Michigan group. Now we are creating an advisory board specifically for active alumni, people who are active in the Alumni Association or active donors, faculty, students, and from all 3 campuses of the University of Michigan. That's our next real step change to get more deeply connected. The University of Michigan has not been specifically targeted yet in the way that other universities have. And what that has meant for us is it's hard to get a sense of urgency among alumni, and though faculty feel more urgency, but alumni, with so many other things competing for attention, especially with ICE and immigration, that's okay. We have a long view of this. And I would just close by saying, people say, well, how many people attended? I say, we're not talking numbers. If you have 50,000 students and 700,000 living alumni, any number is not going to seem significant. But we are successful because the president and the regents know we exist, they know we represent alumni, and they know we're paying attention. Now I turn it over to Erica.
Thank you. So Stand Up for Yale started as a letter back in the spring, back at the end of April, as Harvard was being targeted. Really 2 letters that found each other. At the time, universities were falling fast and furious, and we wanted the Yale administration to hear that alumni wanted them to fight back. We collectively got support from more than 7,000 alumni. But after submitting our letter, we quickly learned that the Yale administration was not going to emerge as a leader in the fight for academic freedom, the way that, say, Princeton and the Wesleyan administrations have, and the way that Harvard has. But we also learned that alumni have a real appetite for ways to take action on behalf of the university or on behalf of democracy more broadly. So we have been trying to figure out how to channel that. That real lack of urgency problem that Donald just talked about is one we have struggled with. I want to highlight some challenges that we've had, both to invite in the chat any recommendations from folks, and because I think these are things that are worth kind of thinking through for folks who are starting their own organizing. The big one is time. There were 4 women who made this letter happen, these initial letters happen inclusive, and the initial work. And we don't have a lot of capacity beyond our jobs and our family obligations. So I offer this up as an invitation. If any of you are also Yale alumni and want to be actively involved, please reach out, standupforyale@gmail.com. And that lack of extra time has made it harder to take advantage of opportunities to organize. Crimson Courage has been enormously helpful here, organizing a Join Harvard Yale tailgate at the Harvard Yale game and getting political and national media attention we basically just had to show up. So I want to like express gratitude. They're organizing things like this call. Another challenge in addition to time has been that lack of urgency and figuring out how to keep some momentum going. Feels like, especially now that we're in an election year, that there may be opportunities to organize alumni around importance of protecting free and fair elections in a nonpartisan way. But there are mission creep questions that arise out of that. And then a third one that took us a little while to articulate is we're in a moment of a populist political environment. Many of us are used to being able to draw on the Yale name to establish credibility, and we certainly can continue to get attention from outlets like the New York Times, which never tires of the Ivy League. But we are at a moment, and frankly, this has gotten worse in the past month or so for understandable reasons, where brands like Yale are not brands that are going to draw a lot of public support. And so going to national media and making some of those plays, you have to think carefully and strategically about that. We focused on local media, again, started to test the waters on organizing around broader issues, and of course can always focus on reaching the Yale alumni, Yale administration. But again, without that urgency, there's not the same concrete asks as perhaps at Harvard. It also finally brings us to the opportunities for cross-campus organizing, which is why I'm so grateful that Crimson Courage put this together. We are, I think, stronger when working with other schools across the country, and are grateful to be part of this. And that's what I got.
Great.
All righty, Lou, now you'll take us through what it takes to organize, and then we'll have a Q&A with the panel, and then we'll wrap it up.
Great. Thanks everyone for coming. My name is Lou Finfer. I'm the class of 72. After volunteering in the civil rights movement in the spring of '68 on the Poor People's Campaign, I then got connected to community organizing through Phillips Brooks' house in 1970, and I've been a community organizer ever since. And myself and Karen Scharf were the first co-chairs of Crimson Courage, and we're still very much involved. As you've heard, President Trump is coming for higher education. President Trump is coming for higher education. He has many powers and tools he will use to try to control teaching, learning, admissions, research, access to students who get financial aid and everything else. The question is, are we going to let him take over higher education? Are we going to let President Trump take over higher education? I don't know if we can unmute. I don't know if we can unmute everyone, but maybe you can put a thumbs down if you're not, thumbs up if you're going to take up the challenge to not let him control higher education. Thumbs up if you want to take up that challenge. So we want to talk about what you can do. We're talking about these alumni groups. It's harder for alumni. There are alumni associations at every college and university, but they're not going to get involved in something that could be seen as political or potentially alienate any potential donor. So these have to be organized independently, and other places in the pillars of campus organizing, students and faculty and sympathetic administrators and so forth don't have those constraints. That's why we have to do this, scratch out this kind of organizing. So the key pieces are basically that you start out with people, thinking about the people you went to school with at that other university, and to try to construct a list of their names and contact information. And everybody can be inventive of how they can get those names of people that you've been in touch with, not as frequently since you went there, but ways you can track them down. And the first thing is really to ask them. You can send them an email, but it's better to call if you have their phone. You can start with an email, but if they don't reply in a day or two, you should try to call them up if you have their phone number. And you want to make the case that we're making and that you've heard, and you know that higher education is under attack, and there's going to be need for a national effort to stand up to this across the country And we can play a role by organizing additional alumni committees. And in our case, it would be Harvard people who went to other universities and helping organize committees in those universities. So you start out with, again, make your own list and contact them by email or phone or whichever way you can do it, and then and talk to them about what's at stake, and then ask the people you contact, ask them to make their own list of contacts um, that they would think want to get involved in this, and to gather their contact information and send it to you so you can compile that together. And then you kind of your last question is, would they be willing to come to a meeting with other alumni to try to work on this? And we're not going to over meeting people, but people need to meet occasionally. So that's the basic pieces. And then we will send you this petition that's being used by the emergency campaign for higher education called Students First as a way to organize. We'll send you this petition. That could be something once you get organized to collect signatures in support of and then publicize it. So those are some of the things that we're asking you to consider doing. And then we're willing to give you backup support from Crimson Courage, from the emergency campaign to support higher education, for Stand for Campus Freedom, on any barriers or that you run into, or any unsureness of what to do or how to handle a problem. If you contact us, we will speak to you and give you some suggestions. We can be your technical assistance supporters, not so technical, organizing assistance supporters. So I think that's, again, start with your own list, spend some time to track down people, then ask those people to construct their lists and contact information and get them to you. And then you can put together the first meeting. Doesn't have to be big, can be 2 people, can be 10 people. It just will grow if you can start it that way. And the last thing I'll say again, please, are we going to ask people to do okay. So I'll sign off by saying once again, President Trump is coming for you. President Trump is coming for you to take over higher education. Are we going to let him do it? Give a thumbs up if we're going to fight this fight. Give a thumbs up if we're going to fight this fight. Thanks very much. Don't mourn the problems we face. Let's go out and organize. A famous organizer said, don't mourn, organize. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to have now a Q&A. Simon's going to read off. So put your questions in the chat if you haven't already, and we'll ask our panelists, Don and Karen and Aiden and Erica, to come back. I will say that as someone asked in the chat, are you welcome of conservatives? And what I answer pretty strongly is we are nonpartisan, which frankly is hard because it's a very partisan attack on us. So we're recognizing that. And we also know that anyone can join us. We do have principles, though. They're on our website for Crimson Courage, and those are the core central values. And if you support those, you can be part of this struggle that we have. And I also want to say, as it was alluded to with Karen's discussion of something coming up that's been working on with accreditation, that will affect every single college, every single university, every single even community college in the entire country. This is not, while Harvard is front and center in the attack, there are other ways that higher education as a whole is being demeaned, criticized, as though the entire sector is not the engine of innovation and support, including Harvard. All of us who are alums can be actually proud of a lot of so much of what it does and recognize there may be flaws in many areas. Anyway, I just wanted to put it out there that accreditation fight is going to affect every single college out there. So all of you, I'm a Yale alum too, and they're kind of hiding under, but it's going to come back. So Simon, what do we have? And I don't know, John, if you can have 5 of us on the screen, but if you could bring the panelists and highlight all of us at once, then we can have this Q&A.
Great. Well, there was already some discussion in the chat about this question, but Beth asked if there's interest in organizing by profession in addition to by school. So I don't know if there's any other panelists that would like to speak directly to that.
That's a great question. Who wants to take that up and maybe
I
did
can
you?
speak a little bit about that if that'd be helpful. We've seen it some various groups across the country. There are some more profession focused alumni groups. So, for example, there's a couple law specific alumni groups that have organized, most notably at Yale, UPenn, and that's kind of like the main two. But there's also some other out of Johns Hopkins University. Shout out. They're organizing primarily in the medical field and some of the issues that intersect with academic freedom when it comes to medical students and nurses and so on. So one of the things that I would recommend when you're thinking about that question of like, when you're thinking about organizing, like be authentic to yourself. If you went to, say, a university and got your JD there, or you got your master's in something, like you don't have to, you can be authentic to yourself, and whatever you organize on can be authentic to what that your connection to that university is, because ultimately that's what's going to be the best way to draw people in. So if you went to law school, organize on the legal issues. If you're a doctor and you graduated from your medical school and you want to organize your medical school, focus on the medical school issues. You can totally do that.
Anyone else? And I will note just there is a group, for instance, at HBS, Leaders for Society, that has really recognized this threat. So Harvard Business School has some alums involved. There's also an organization of folks in public health, some that have joined. I think there's someone at Yale with that. There's Harvard, there's UC. So in terms of that professional that is happening, also it's a really good question. And again, as Aidan said, it would be really important for all of us to support that. And if you're interested in organizing around that, fantastic. We'd love to support you in that. One of the reasons we're excited about hiring an organizer, I put the job description in case anybody knows some stellar person we're interviewing, is that it's that kind of follow-up that with our all volunteer crew, it's sometimes hard to provide that support, but we're eager to do that.
Patty, there's a couple of questions about that kind of allude to Harvard specifically. So Dina asked, when I read the articles that Harvard was about to settle, I felt both angry and helpless. What can I or we do if this happens again? And then Ken just asked, did you make a specific ask of the university administration of no settlement? How did you prevent a settlement?
Karen, do you want to, as one of the founders of Crimson Courage, do you want to take that on, or?
I mean, one thing is just like as each thing happens, Crimson Courage is generally sending out to our email list, actions that people can take. So if you're not on the email list, definitely sign up. And sometimes those emails I find for myself go to the spam folder or whatever your email provider does. So make sure you're getting them and that you're making them come to your inbox and you're seeing them. The other thing though that we really need people to do is get more people on our list so we have more people to take action when it comes time to take action. So we're encouraging everybody, all the Harvard alums, to reach out to everybody who's a Harvard alum, and ask them to sign up for the Crimson Courage list so we're ready for the next round of action. So those are the two biggest. I would say those are the two. There's like miscellaneous things, but the two biggest things are get more people on our list so everybody can take action whenever we send you out an action to take.
Yeah, and I would add to that, we can all be discouraged, but the reality is, I would say Crimson Courage did have, maybe it's only this much, maybe it's this much, but we had an influence because thousands of alums signed on to the amicus brief. That was not led by Crimson Courage, but it was led by Anurima Bhargava, who is affiliated with us, but we helped them gather signatures. That definitely had an impact. And there were thousands of new donations. I am one of them. I'm not in the category of being able to give millions because I'm in local politics actually, and my salary is not big enough, and I haven't made enough to do that. But I upped my donation to Harvard, 3 times because I felt like I really want to support them in this. So that's another way you can have an impact, to make sure. And there's a link on our website to donate to Harvard so they know it's coming through Crimson Courage. And I would say this alumni efforts across the board are noticed by the administration at Harvard, and I think it's very heartening to all of us. So my message to whoever asked that is definitely staying involved, as Karen said, but also recognize that it is this grassroots movement that has been having enough of an impact that we're noticed. Anyone else want to add to that, or? Or Simon, you can add to it. You're also, you've seen that.
No, I think you summarized it pretty well. I've got a couple other good questions in here. So Ritika asked, what's the best way to spread the word to large numbers of alumni if starting out with a small group? I know this is something that all of us have pondered.
I'm happy to speak on that if you'd like. Um, I think, like I said, you really want to go public and lead with your values forward. Um, you are most likely, not the only alumni who at your university who is concerned about the state of the world, concerned about what's going on in higher education, concerned about, what their university is doing or not doing. And frankly, the main way to reach those people is creating a public presence and creating an outlet. I think as we've highlighted in kind of multiple areas, people are going to look to their schools or they're going to look to their alumni associations for guidance on this, and they're not going to find it. And us as passionate alumni on this, we have a responsibility, frankly, to make that space for folks to get involved. There's numerous ways that you can go public. One of the things that Stanford Campus Freedom really tries to advise folks on is to create a petition detailing what's going on at your university, detailing what your group or whatever your alumni group cares about. A petition is really helpful in that you can identify precisely what's going on at your university, what values the alumni community stand for, whether it's academic freedom, the safety and protection of students, standing up for undocumented or immigrant communities. Like, there are so many different angles that you can take it. But by going public like that, you're going to find additional people who care about this sort of stuff. And those folks, it's a really easy way for them to, sign their name on it, get in touch, and then you can contact them as well. We have a platform called Control Shift. So if you want to check that out, that is a great way to go public and reach additional folks.
Great. And I know, Miles, you wanted to go in, and Erica, if you wanted to jump in on how you got those thousands of people to sign the letters, that would be great too.
All right, I'll just make a quick point, and it's actually something that Don said earlier, which is one of the things that we did was to just sort of think creatively about where you can get lists from. So, a lot of the universities have magazines. The magazines probably have class reports, and the class, and at least in Harvard Magazine, the class secretaries have their emails there. So we emailed all the class secretaries from 1946 on, and a lot of them sent it out to their classes. There are clubs. I'm sure there are university clubs that are in various cities, and we found a list of them, which was not that hard to do, and we emailed to them, to their presidents, and they got it out. So I think Aiden is right and Lou is right. You can start off with a small group. But I think if you have a mechanism to find other people, do that, and then you'd have to have something to ask them to do. So I think what Aiden was saying is true. There's also an ICE petition, anti-ICE petition that Stanford Campus Freedom has done. And there's what Karen mentioned, which is the pledge to ask universities to sign. So there are things that you have to ask people to do. But I think creatively thinking about where are lists that you can accumulate is a useful thing.
Another resource, about every university tends to have a social service organization where people volunteer and do social service work. And they would have their own alumni lists of people who did that work and connected and feel connected. We went to the social service group in Harvard, which was called Phillips Brooks House, that has some humongous number of thousands of people on their list as another way to spread the word. And those are people who are committed, because they did that work back then, and I'm sure they continue to do it in their lives. So it's another way to get a good list.
I can follow up on Miles' comment. Miles, when we spoke to Crimson Courage, Miles brought up this idea of going to the alumni clubs, and the University of Michigan has 150 alumni clubs, and we found an email contact for each of them all over the world. We sent that to them. And a few hours later, we were told that the Alumni Association sent a note following ours saying, do not forward this information. And we then found out, never directly, that they might be receptive to forwarding information about a webinar, but they were not receptive to forwarding information about a letter, an open letter, claiming that they were a nonprofit and that was influencing our regents, our publicly elected. That would be influencing publicly elected officials. So we have not given up on that, Miles. We are still pursuing it, but it was sort of interesting. We actually had 200 emails because some had more than one, and a few hours later, letter went out to all of them.
We have had a similar situation with formal Yale outreach. The Yale administration keeps a very tight hold on alumni groups and the formal lists, but of course, there are individuals who have access to relevant information who can be helpful in spreading the word through unofficial channels, and we've had some success there. We have likewise had success with I don't unofficial alumni interest groups, right? Alumni of the Yale Political Union, for example, groups like that. And then Yale let in women for the first time, I think, in the late 60s. And we have all learned that the women of that generation are very well connected and very just really like have their values in the right place. So we were able to tap some of those alumni groups, and they were able to reach out to a different generation of alumni than, say, I'm in touch with on a daily basis.
Patty, we've got another good question from Juliana. Can you say a bit about the challenge of maintaining a balance between being a carrot and a stick for our institutions? Sometimes we want to praise, but we also need them to do things they're not naturally planning to take otherwise.
Yeah, who wants to take on that?
I'll just say that it relates also to a comment that Jonathan put in the chat about the measures that Harvard's taking around admissions, DEI, human resources curriculum, all of which are very problematic and are a lot of what they're saying, that they're saying no to the Trump administration publicly while they're doing a lot of the things that are being demanded of them on their own. And it is challenging to figure out both the carrot and stick aspect of that and also how to know what they're exactly doing and how to influence it. One thing that Crimson Courage is doing is I think Miles mentioned this, we're doing a survey of the people who are running for Board of Overseers and the Harvard Alumni Association on the issues that Crimson Courage has taken on, so that we can get a sense before alumni have to vote of what those stands are. And we'll obviously share that information with everybody once we have the answers to the questionnaire. So that's one way to start to influence both like who gets elected to these roles, and then also to have the people who do get elected understand that there's a constituency out there that has concerns about what Harvard is doing on its own. And we did do one letter when they took their first kind of anti-DEI action last fall to the administration. We've been discussing doing some follow-up because a lot more things have happened since then. And while it's impossible to react to every single thing, and a lot of things are hard to decipher, we do feel like it's necessary for us as an alumni group to be very clear with the administration that we have strong concerns and opposition to a lot of the ways that they are, pre-capitulating even without having a settlement. And so I do think that for any alumni group, even the most sympathetic college administrations are taking measures to be less under the gun from Trump. So we do have a role of trying to protect what the college had. And we all know, I think, that was never good enough, right? That, even with the measures of DEI measures they've had and the other steps that they've taken around race and gender, it still wasn't good enough. And now it's going backwards. And so it's really incumbent upon us to push back against that at the same time as we're supporting them in not officially settling or capitulating. Other folks want to add to that.
And I'll always remember, there's polarizing, there's a time to polarize, and there's a time to depolarize. There's a time to praise, and there's a time to challenge. And you can do that in the same conversation, the same letter, the same meeting. And you just have to remember to do that, even if you're more angry at something at that moment.
Yeah. And Erica or Aiden, you want to add to that?
I think, Lou, you really said it best, is that there is times to speak out, there's time to support. I'll also say when you are first starting out a group, it's really important that you're leading with values forward and you're not necessarily locking yourself into either a permanently supportive or a permanently antagonistic relationship with the university. And that can really come through with the sort of language you use in a webinar or whatever you use to go public, whether it's an op-ed, a petition, etc. It's important to be values forward, because then that gives you the freedom to say, if the university is standing for those values, then we stand with the university. And if the university isn't standing with those values, then we're going to speak out about it. So that's what I would say.
Erica?
We leaned heavily on carrot at initially. One building on what Aiden has pointed out, the culture has changed a lot over the past year. The wind was at the sails of the administration back in the spring. A lot of institutions were crumbling. That I think has shifted, and people have learned that what happens when you don't stand up to a bully. And so I think one thing that we are conscious of is the ways that messages about the risks involved in standing up versus fighting back land differently now than they did even 10 months ago.
And Patty, Karen already kind of touched on this question, but the final question I see in the chat is the one from Jonathan, just about any strategies being put in place to specifically protect attacks on admissions, human resources, and curriculum related to DEI, and what Harvard's doing to protect that data.
Yeah, you mean, so there's, I don't know if other people want to talk about it, but there's been a whole push to get information from Harvard. You're talking about the lawsuit where they were just thrown into another, and it wasn't specific information about individuals per se, except Harvard's response is, look, you're asking us for this information that's going to disclose, if we give you geographic information about a particular student in a particular area, that runs afoul of the Student Privacy Act, that is federal law. So I think there's some real tension there within Harvard about making sure they are pushing back hard to say we are going to comply with the law and give you information that is legally required, and you really should not be able to get anything beyond that. Is that the question that was being asked, Simon, or?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Then just anything else related to attacks on DEI, and I think that if there's I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah, and others should definitely feel free to weigh in. I mean, what's totally weird is that if you take D, E, and I, how can you be against diversity? How can you be against equity? How can you be against inclusion? It's become this catch-all to say, this is all these woke libtards running around, not even paying attention to anybody who's not a particular thing. And it just, if you actually peel it back and understand what diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging mean, it's so much something, in the 1920s and 30s, there was quotas at Harvard to limit the number of Hebrew students to make sure that they didn't overwhelm the college. I mean, there's just, over time, there's been so many ways in which we have pushed hard for ensuring everybody's welcome. And it's really critical that we support those values and I think make a strong statement to say how critically important it is to reinforce the fact that diversity literally is a strength. I mean, one of the things I learned at SOM, and every single business or management journal you talk about says, if you have diversity of opinion in any decision that you're making, whether it's a Fortune 500 CEO or a board of a small nonprofit, that diversity of opinion is going to lead you to better outcomes. So I think that's a core value for Crimson Courage, to say it's really important that we defend that from that perspective. And it's easy to defend if you actually step back and understand what is really at risk. I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
I know we're coming up on time, and so it might be a good time to go to the poll here too.
Yeah. All right, John, take us away. So just so folks know, there's a bunch of things that were in the chat. There was a job description for the Crimson Courage. I think Aiden put the Stanford Campus Freedom site. I think Karen put the pledge for the emergency campaign. And now John is going to take you to a poll that here is the time, if you want to specifically, it'll take a minute, put in your name. We probably already have, here it is, working with others to set up a courage group. We want you to be involved. We want you to say, I want to help Harvard. I'm a proud Harvard alum, and also I have an affiliation with another university, and I want to help Harvard by helping other places that I have an affiliation with. And it could be you're an alum or a staff or faculty or even a community member.
And please remember, once you're done with your answers, to press submit, or we won't receive your answer. And we're going to leave this open for a minute or two. Right now, no one has answered, so I'm encouraging you, fill out the form. There we go. Someone has
one person answered.
Finished it full, and that's fantastic.
Okay, and it's on the screen. It really is just, hey, now that you've heard all this, do you want to be more involved? And if so, this doesn't commit you to anything, but what it means is that we know that you're eager to help spread the word and also may well be interested in being a leader at another one of the many, many, there's hundreds of institutions of higher learning across the country, all of which could use our help. There's a bunch that are priority campuses that I think Aiden at Stanford Campus Freedom can talk about. And just to remind us all, every single university and college across the country is affected by this, even if it's not directly. And I know we have to work with our alma mater of Yale, Erica, to remind them of that they may think they can hide themselves under the table, but this is not going to stop with Harvard. It hasn't already. There's just so many ways in which institutions across the entire country are being hurt. And frankly, part of the way they're being hurt is people in the country have been told that higher education as a whole is an institution they shouldn't support when it's the center and core of our economy, as well as so much of the people who are benefiting the most from this. There was another article today in the Boston Globe that a bunch, 12 or so stellar, top-notch, world-renowned researchers are leaving for Australia from across the country, from Harvard, from Johns Hopkins, from Cornell. They have been enticed because they feel like they can't trust the US. So that is definitely going to hurt the country as a whole. All right, so we got at least a few people filling out the
I have a
the
question
poll.
from Nimet saying, should we fill out the form even if we are involved in a Courage group? Hattie, what do you think?
If you're already involved and then that's great. And then make sure that you contribute to those.
We want to know that, that they were at this meeting. You can put that on the poll. We want to know that you were at this meeting and, you're in a group is great already.
And if we don't already know you're involved, then it might be helpful to us to connect you with other people if they ask us.
Patty, my suggestion is we leave the poll open while you do your closing remarks and then we close it. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense to me. So it'll be a quick close because I just said this thing. What I really want to do is thank all of you who are here, and also Karen, Aiden, Don, Lou, Erica, Miles for coming here to talk about this critically important area. And Simon, you beautifully started us off with exactly what it is that we need to remind people of, is that this challenge is great and yet we're up for it. And the danger is pretty high. This is a situation that how many times have we all said, heard, and felt, oh, it's unprecedented. It's an unprecedented attack, and yet it's becoming precedented because it has happened so often. It's almost as though those words are meaningless because it seems like every single month there's another attack. And I am a fiercely proud and also highly critical in many different ways of Harvard as an alum. And I can hold both of those. And I think all of us probably feel that about an institution. The way I see it and the way we all see it and the way all of us volunteering on Crimson Courage, we understand higher education is one of the pillars of society and to democracy. And if that is not strong and supported and continues to hold up all the values we have, again, there, whatever flaws are in other places of the university, if they fall down, literally democracy is at stake. So the closing remarks are, wherever you are, support Harvard. Harvard needs you. You may not feel it, but Harvard actually needs, and they need to hear from you. And every single person I've met over the last few months, I say, all right, if you don't go to Harvard and you're not part of Crimson Courage, wherever you went, let the university that you went to or the college that you went to know that you care about academic freedom and the rule of law and that you hope they do too. And I think that's the best thing all of us can do. All of us who have ties to Harvard. There's a lot of my classmates who have not yet become part of Crimson Courage. It's my personal mission to try to get them, but every single person I meet, no matter where you are, make sure you've made the case for how critically important higher education as a sector is to critical thinking in society, to supporting the rule of law, but also to democracy and to our economy and to innovation. And I also want to note, Evelyn Kim is part of this webinar. She's been doing all those stellar communications that some of you have gotten. So I want to have a shout out to her and thank her for her work on this as well. I know she's been been working overtime because we've had so much to communicate.
All right, with that, we're going to play our closing music and end up.
Thanks, everybody.
And thanks
Thank
to
you.
John. John, thank you. You're also another stellar volunteer. All right, come on, you guys. Nobody else is dancing? It's good music.